Hi guys, this month we're going to explore the wonderful world of international organizations. Now, on the outset, this seems a little bit scary, right? What are these international organizations that have fantastic acronyms that involve countries that I don't know much about, let alone, the organizations I don't know much about. So now I've got these countries, and then on top of the countries, I've got all these strange random organizations. So it sounds a little bit intimidating, and if you get into it, it can be quite complex. But what we're going to do is kind of simplify it, right? So every debate is about some basic principles, and today we'll discuss some basic principles which you need to know and which you can use and exploit in the debate about international organizations, right? So don't forget, no matter how complex a debate becomes or might seem, a debate is still a debate, and those debates are about some of these basic principles, okay? But remember, even if it seems like it's getting tough and so on and so forth, it's important. Most of the debates you do about international relations and international issues will include one or more international organization, right? They are the main actor to solve 100,000 different problems. So you have the countries, and then above the countries, you have some kind of international organization. You have UN, you have the EU, you have NATO, you have many more. So if you're embarking upon a career of debating, and you want to have that successful debate career, you will do debates about international relations, and in those debates, I guarantee you, I bet my left eye, that you will eventually talk about an international organization. Okay, so this is good for your long-term mental health. So in this month, we're going to cover 4 types of international organizations. But in the last week, we'll look at 2, right? So we're going to start with the United Nations this week, and then move on to the rest of them. So before I get into the United Nations, let's do a brief overview of international organizations. What are they and how do you debate them? Now, I think it's always good to kind of simplify, to try to find an analogy that you can use to understand this and that you can use to explain this to people in a debate, right? Because if it's very confusing, you're not just harming yourself, you're harming the other team and you're harming the judges because everybody's confused, right? And then when everybody's confused, you can't control the debate, and God knows what happens then. So let's try to simplify and understand international organizations. Now, I think international organizations are just like clubs, right? Are just like people who form an association because they have some kind of common interest. So let's draw a principle. So let's say it's people who live together in houses, right? It's like a housing area. So this is one house, there's another house, there's another house, and then maybe they're all neighbors, okay? They live together, and they all share some kind of common interest, right? So maybe they're all worried about security. So they say, hey, let's form a club to improve the security in our neighborhood, right? So what they can do through this club is they take turns, watching the neighborhood, or they use this as a point to discuss things, or they pool money, and then they buy like a guard dog, here's go wolf dog, mooks, more like a rabbit or whatever. But they use these things together, and then they protect themselves, right? So they form an organization, and many international organizations are just this: are different countries, right, who pool together because of some common interest. Now that common interest can be security, that common interest can be the economy, or sometimes that common interest is just that we live close to each other, and if you live close to each other, your problems will tend to affect each other. When this guy has a big party, then the music will affect these guys. Or when this guy has, buys more dogs, and then he takes his dogs out for walks, he scares the other people. So all these problems affect each other, and therefore maybe we should form an organization and discuss these things, because if you don't, it often leads to conflicts. People fight, right? And in the early times of human civilization, we had a lot of conflicts. Countries would fight with each other, clans would fight with each other, and create lots and lots of wars. And wars are not good for happiness, not good for development, because when you spend all your resources fighting, you don't spend resources developing individuals, you don't spend resources, well, on yourself, right? Building your countries and your homes and so on and so forth. So that's basically international organizations. And accept that rather than just an individual or house, you have countries, okay? So the complexity comes from the complexity of these groups, right? So, in the house, so let's say who gets to make the decision on whether to join the club or not join the club, right? So maybe the father in the house really wants to join this organization, but the rest of the family members don't, because they know the dad's going to spend all his time with the organization, right? And not come home and chill with the rest of the family. So they have a disagreement. Should you join? Should you not join? Should you join? Should you not join? And then he'll give all these different advantages on why you should join, why you should not join, and so on and so forth. But other people will say no. So there'll be a debate within the debate, right? Is it beneficial for this person to be part of this organization or not part of this organization, right? And that's one type of debates that you will have at international organizations, but very similar to this type of debate, right? In order to do that debate well, you really need to understand this actor and the benefits of joining this organization, which includes the benefits of working together with these guys, right? So already you should be able to think of similar debates like this, right? And there'll be one later in the book about whether one country should be allowed to join another country, right? Then the other very common debate that you will have about these international organizations are about their roles. So this one, let's say, was set up for security, okay? And it's done a pretty decent job managing security. But after a while, they realized that, hey, since we have this club, we can also maybe pool our resources and buy stuff, right? Like Thanksgiving is coming, instead of buying one turkey each, if we buy 3, then we save money. Yeah, let's do that. It's a good idea. And then maybe we can bulk buy other stuff. And then soon they bulk buy everything else, and then they form a bulk buying union, or and then they start trading things with each other. Like, I have too much turkeys and I have too much sugar, and I sell to each other. And it turns out pretty, awesome. There's that trade union. But now they're not just doing security, they're also doing stuff to do with money and with trading. And so the role of that organization has changed, which is great if it benefits everyone. But what if one guy is not so happy, right? He says, look, I don't celebrate Thanksgiving, or I'm a vegetarian, so I don't want to buy turkeys. But the rest of you want to buy turkey. And it doesn't work if it doesn't benefit everybody equally, right? So this is another debate, or type of debate, that you will have with international organizations, or whether or not the role of that organization should change, has changed. What is the value and the function of that organization now, right? So is that organization still relevant? Maybe it's used to be security, now it needs to change because the world needs more of this or more of that. Or the organization is security, but it's failing to do its security job, right? Because this dog is like pretty fat and lazy, and so the organization's not serving its purpose and should be disbanded. Or it's not making the members happy. It's changed too much and become something else. It needs to come back down and be this. So variety of debates about the role of that organization, right? What should the role of that organization be? Should it change? Is it fulfilling its role? Okay? And finally, just about the value of that organization. Is the organization doing its job? Right? I touched on this a little bit when I talked about the lazy dog. So it is a security organization, but is the security organization working? Okay? So fundamentally, this model is all you need to know about, or to understand the basic principles of international organizations, right? They are these different individual actors, these countries, who've come together for some purpose, okay? And based on that purpose, they're trying to do things. Now, is it successful? Is it not successful? All those things will depend on how these countries interact with each other and whether or not they serve that purpose, right? But anytime you get a little bit confused about debate, about the IR or international organizations debates, come back down to this analogy. Okay? Now, I think there are fundamentally three types of IR debates, or the debates will, well, not IR, I keep saying IR, international organization debates, and they'll come down to largely three things. Let me try to simplify it. I'll keep this model here. So you have debates about the roles of that organization, what it should do, what it shouldn't do, what is it doing what it's supposed to do. Then you have internal debates, so about the internal mechanisms of that organization. And then you have debates about the external aspects, so like how that organization is affecting other things, right? How is it acting? How is it doing its job or somewhere else or not doing its job, okay? But all of these debates will kind of interact. I think in pretty much every international organization debate, you have some discussion about the role. What is the role? Is it fulfilling its role? Should the role change? Okay? Pretty much every international organization debate, you'll touch on the role. The debate will either be directly about the role, or using the role, you will argue about these things or other things, right? Because it's very important for an international organization to serve its purpose. If you can prove that this is the purpose, the main purpose, then the rest of the things will have to follow from there, right? So internal debates are about mechanisms, things that happen within the organization. So should the organization get new members or not new members? Should the organization have a president instead of a prime minister, if that makes a difference? How do members in the organization vote, right, to do its decision-making process? Should it have different committees? Should some of the committee structures change? Okay. Now, why should it change these things? Because it better serves its role, or it may impact how it does its job, right? So there will always be a little bit of one of these two things, but what the debate will be primarily about, right? So for example, debates about Security Council membership, debates about whether or not an organization should add, another member that's close by. Should they join? It's an ugly looking house. Should they join or should they not join? Are about how we should do things internally, right? And you can argue because it makes the organization stronger, because it better fulfills its role, because, it's right. They deserve to be part of it, because it's more democratic, something about it from an internal perspective. And then you can say, but it also then makes it do its job better. It makes it more effective. For example, we could have solved this crisis. For example, we could have helped these people. For example, we could have improved our quality of life, or so on and so forth. So these are how it deals with specific issues outside of that organization. Okay, so you will talk about some of these things, but the question is whether or not internally that organization should change or not change. It's fundamentally a debate about within that organizations and that structure. Okay, the third area is external impacts. How this organization is impacting other things, other people. Right? How are they solving? Are they solving a crisis? Are they doing its job externally? So, is it solving the security issues in the region? Right? Is that organization working to do that? Is it helping the trade imbalance? Is it doing something? So, how is it functioning and doing its job? Or should it do something new now? Should this organization move on and buy something else? That is the third thing, okay? So these debates tend to be quite specific, to the crisis or the action that you're asking that organization to take. For example, that NATO should intervene in Syria, right? So that is about NATO, the organization, doing something in Syria, right? That the United Nations should sanction X country, okay? That ASEAN should criticize another country or do another action. So all of those things are about an organization doing something externally, right? Now, that again, you have to talk about the role, right? You have to say, well, this is the job of this organization. This organization should do this because that's what it was founded for back in, those days. And because it was founded in those days to do this, it needs to do it now. Someone will say, no, that's not its role, man. Come on. Its role was not to do this, never to do this to begin with. So it shouldn't do this now. Or the roles changed. Maybe that's what it was set up to before, when, you know, our ancestors were doing these things. But hey, it's changed now. This is not the world which we live in. In this world, there are other actors, there are other stuff, blah, blah, blah. We don't need to do this, right? And you can say our internal structures don't allow it to do this. Our internal structures fail for us to do this. There are vetoes that will cause us problems. We don't have the right members, or our members will be unhappy or something, so we shouldn't do this external action, right? So that's basically international organization debates in like 5 minutes, maybe a little bit more than 5 minutes, right? So you have a debate about the role. What is the purpose of this organization? Has it changed? Should it change? You can argue for this role to change too. None of these things are fluid, right? Even if it was set up for security purposes, it's moved on now. There's a strategic advantage for us to start looking into economic issues. We should change, man. Change is great. Okay, so that's one. With the role, always something about the role. And then either a more inward-looking view of the organization. So this requires you to understand the organization structure and the members, right? Every organization is a balance of those members. Do the members want this? How will it affect members? Blah, blah, blah. That becomes a big deal when you look inside the organization or outside. Should the organization act onto something else, right? And for this, you really need to understand the problem that it is acting on. In intervening in Syria, trying to do something about poverty, trying to ban something, whatever, right? It's trying to do some action. Will that organization solve that action? Is it an effective actor to solve that action? Is it consistent with the role of that organization? Does it have, how will it impact the members and its tools to solve that action? And there you go, boys and girls, pretty much everything you know. Or, well, not everything you know, everything you need to know about international organizations. Although, and this is my PS, this is a great framework for you to start. But if you're going to be like an expert and, I don't know, win some of these debates and cream people, you can't avoid learning things. You just need to know the facts, right? Spend a few minutes reading up about the UN and reading up about these other places and other organizations. And initially, it's going to seem a little bit intimidating because there are lots of names and lots of abbreviations. But keep this in the back of your mind and plug those things here somewhere and it will make sense. Right? And then sooner or later, your knowledge will grow and it will be this beautiful thing that comes together in your mind and then just goes like, wow, that's great. I want to work for an international organization now. Or maybe not. Maybe not.